All right, everyone, buckle up because we are about to take a deep dive into a story that's got it all. Music, history, a little bit of intrigue. Oh, and did I mention beer bottles?
Yeah, hand me a beer
Yeah.
bottles. But yeah, this one's a wild ride.
So picture this. Zimbabwe in the 1980s, a group of dedicated folks are on a mission to preserve the musical traditions of the Shona people. We're talking about their incredible marimba music.
The Marimbas is truly unique. It's like a massive xylophone, but with these wooden keys that are attached to resonators, often made from gourds, to give it this incredibly rich sound. It's mesmerizing to hear.
See, I'm already learning stuff, but here's the thing. This wasn't just about hitting record and calling it a day. This project was all about really getting deep into the nitty-gritty of Shona music, how it works, how it's tuned, and the whole cultural context. And
Mm.
all this is happening while Mugabe is in power, which I'm guessing added a whole other level of complication.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine trying to preserve something as old and rich as Shona musical tradition while navigating the constantly shifting landscape of politics. It
Yeah.
was a lot. Even something as fundamental as tuning the marimbas became a challenge.
Right, because you can't just Google how to tune a marimba Shona style, can you?
Exactly. They had to get creative.
Right.
And what do they use? Empty Lucky Lager beer bottles.
Wait, seriously, beer bottles?
Yep. They use them as resonators, experimenting by putting different amounts of water in them to hit the specific notes needed for the Shona scale.
That is brilliant. Talk about resourcefulness. So we've got traditional music, we've got beer bottles. It's like a match made in, well, But it really shows how dedicated these people were to preserving their musical heritage.
Absolutely. And that dedication led them to seek out funding to further bridge the gap between their musical traditions and Western notation.
Yeah, our source mentioned a $3,000 grant. Any idea what it was for?
It was specifically to help make Shona music understandable to those familiar with Western musical scales. Kind of like translating a book, you want to keep the soul of the original but make it accessible to a wider audience. They ended up using the G scale, which made it a lot easier for people used to Western music theory to get what was going on.
Fascinating. It added a whole other layer of cultural exchange to the project. It makes you wonder, though, did they ever, write a paper about this whole experience? Our source mentioned something about not submitting a paper.
It's true. The source does casually mention not fulfilling certain scholarship requirements that might have come with the grant, which is really telling when you think about it, about what their priorities must have been at the time.
Yeah, talk about pressure. And speaking of pressure, we can't ignore the economic situation in Zimbabwe at the time with Mugabe's policies and everything. Our source talks about these things called chocolate Krugerrands. What in the world are those?
It's such a fascinating detail, isn't it? Krugerrands are these South African gold coins, and they're still around today. But back then, when the economy was struggling, people started making chocolate versions. Part novelty, part, I don't know, maybe a reminder of better times.
Wow. So you've got these musicians trying to preserve their heritage, using beer bottles to tune instruments, and meanwhile, the economy is doing so poorly that chocolate coins are a thing. It kind of makes you stop and think.
It does, doesn't it? It really highlights just how deeply connected cultural projects are to the political and economic realities of their time. You can't have one without the other.
It makes you think about all those seemingly random events, the music, the bottles, the chocolate coins, and wonder if they're not so random after all. Maybe everything is connected in ways we don't always realize.
Precisely. And maybe that's something for all of us to consider. How often do we miss those connections in our own lives? And what impact might those seemingly unrelated events have on the bigger picture?
Heavy stuff. Definitely something to ponder.